Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome to our staff wellbeing event. Both those of you who are joining us online and those of you who are joining us here in person today. This is the first of hopefully a number of discussions around the topic of female menopause. I'm delighted to have our speakers who will lead the discussions on the physical changes that occur as part of the menopause journey, including emotional changes and the positive health practices we can adopt to support us in this journey. In addition, over the coming months, we'll be working to develop a menopause policy that will be here to support staff. So if you are interested in being part of a working group that will look at developing that policy, then please let us know at wellness@nuigalway.ie. So now I would like to introduce our speakers who will give a short presentation followed by a panel discussion, questions and answers. If you have any questions, you will have the opportunity to pose them either here in person or online through the chat function. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers today. We have Dr. Ava Flynn. Ava is a GP and a lecturer in general practice in the School of Medicine in the College of Medicine, Nursing and Health Sciences. Ava works clinically as a general practitioner in Galway and also as a lecturer in the discipline of general practice. She lectures in undergraduate and postgraduate education. Ava has a special interest in women's health and the health concerns of females at all stages of life. In particular, she has a keen interest in optimizing health for those in the perimenopause, menopause, and post-menopause. Ava is also a teacher of mindfulness-based stress reduction and runs regular mindfulness sessions for both students and staff at NUI Galway. Miss Madeline Rabbit is a lead nurse with CRE and leads the Third Age Mayo project. CRE's Third Age project offers a new way of thinking about aging and is especially designed to promote health and well-being. Madeline is here today representing CRE. Dr. Ananya Gupta is a lecturer above the bar in physiology within the discipline of physiology in the School of Medicine. Ananya is the director of exercise physiology at NUI Galway and strongly advocates the importance of physical activity in our daily lives. Ananya has a long-standing research interest in cancer survivorship and is currently engaged in research in cancer treatment side effects and exercise therapy and rehabilitation. I'd like to thank all three of our speakers for giving us their time here today. And I hope you enjoy the presentation. I'll now hand you over to Dr. Ava Flynn.
Okay. All right then. So I'll get started. You have an idea of who I am, and I am fortunate enough to be able to work with a lot of female patients. And, you know, in my journey as a doctor, I've learned a lot in the last, I would say, even 10 years working clinically. And I've really been brought into this area of working with female patients at lots of different stages of life. But now looking at the menopause, what I've learned is that there's a good outlook and the future is bright. And there's lots of good help for you at this stage of your life. Whether you're here now or not, we're living longer. That's one thing that our first world has given us. But it also means that we'll be spending a third of our life in the post-menopause. So unlike the lives that our grandmothers would have had, or possibly our mothers, now there is good health care for women when they come to this stage of life. So that's what I want to try and talk to you. And, I'm used to speaking with doctors, but then when I'm talking about patients, I want to keep it normal and as if, just normal information, understandable, okay? So stop me if anything is unclear, and I will be here for the questions afterwards. So this is what we're going to look at, an overview. What is this menopause, okay? How is it going to show up in our life? And how will it affect our life? And how can we take care of ourselves? And what can I do to help you and my colleagues? So, what is the menopause? So it's a natural stage of life, and it will come to all of us. Some of us will be more aware of it than others. And it's a gradual process of ovarian failure. So what does that mean? It means where it will come to a point where the ovary will no longer release an egg, okay? And there will be a decline, but also a complete depletion of estrogen. And estrogen is our friend. It can cause problems, but it's our friend in that it's, I suppose, what gives us a lot of our energy, our vitality, our good skin, our good hair, all of that. But as it declines, then it affects us. What we know about estrogen is there's receptors all throughout our body, and if we're not able to feed those receptors, it can show up then with different changes in our body, which I'm going to go through this morning. So the clear definition of menopause is when 12 months have passed and you haven't had a period in the past 12 months, okay? So that's menopause. Now, coming up to that point where you look back and there's been no period for the past 12 months, if you're not in that category, you could be perimenopause, where the periods are happening a little bit more scantily or erratic, maybe every 3 months. And it's just where the estrogen is falling and it's just going a little bit wonky, and it's coming up in our body in that way until you reach that place of menopause where the periods have stopped. And then post-menopause, it's the time beyond that, okay? The average age in Ireland is 51 to 52, okay? Now, for 1%, there's the premature menopause, where it comes on, less than the age of 45, okay? And or earlier, okay? And the whole message is good menopausal health. And it's not pie in the sky. It's a very real thing. So how would it show up for you in your life, okay? In the earlier stages, so in that perimenopause where the periods are a little bit scanty, not as regular, or else where there is no periods, when you're aware of that, the initial signs could be, but not for everyone, okay? But it could be hot flushes, night sweats, all right? And this happens in about 80% of females, but not everyone. Then you can have vaginal dryness, itch, painful passage of urine, and pain with intercourse. A change in your mood where you don't feel quite the same and you don't feel amazing. Change in your libido. Palpitations such as your heart racing. Change in your memory or brain fog, just where there's a certain lapse. And it can be really quite frustrating as to what that is for the female. Tiredness, insomnia. Joint aches and pains. This is something that I'm seeing a lot with women, okay? So, I want to just bring your attention to this, something that you can bring home to Menopause Matters, an amazing website and developed by an amazing woman, Heather Curry, who came to NUI a couple of years ago, actually, to speak about the menopause with clinical colleagues. This is something for people that could be coming to the menopause, and great source of information. And when you go into it, you can do a small quiz to see where you are with it. Really, really good. Okay, so how does it affect daily life and for you? So the body changes, okay, with those hot flushes, the lack of energy, maybe the joint aches, the changes with the period, okay? And then there is changes in the body shape too. Less energy, metabolism is slowing down, so the way the fat is distributed in the body can change, okay? Emotions, you don't feel as you used to feel. And then in turn that can affect, how we see things, or maybe can be a little bit more negative about things, maybe a little bit more irritable. The fact that there can be, but not for everybody, a change in the memory. There is the, acceptance of that and to deal with that. And all of that can have an effect on your confidence, okay? And then, where you are a very capable person, you may have felt more capable. And then if there's changes now, this can just have an overall effect on the confidence. And then in turn, relationships. You could have been a busy professional and also a mother. You could be at a stage of your life where you see your children are moving on, and you wonder where is your place right now. So some women talk about an invisibility at this stage of life. But if you have the background of a change in hormones, you know, there's something very clinical and physiological that could be supporting this feeling within that can be helped. So how do you take care of yourself? Educate yourself. Figure out what this is. Is this here? And, you know, how is it showing up for me? And what can I do for myself? That website is super, okay? A lifestyle review. Now, I was going to say we're Irish women. Maybe we're not all Irish women, but we're here right now, okay? One thing that is going to show up in our life, very likely, could be a heart disease, okay? That is the biggest killer in Ireland. I know, heavy word. So we have to optimise our health, okay? So within that, these are these points. But these dovetail very significantly with steps that you can take to help how you're feeling during the menopause. So it's a win-win. If you put in the time with this, you're going to feel better, but you're also going to be protecting yourself from something happening within your heart. Okay? The other thing too, for women, ischemic heart disease or heart problems, heart attacks, strokes, it shows up 10 years later on average than the males. So they'll be the ones coming into me with the chest pain, whereas the woman could be 10 years later, maybe in her 60s, when there's something happening here, I don't feel quite right. So we need to put the time in now so we can protect ourselves. So lifestyle review, diet, exercise, weight, alcohol, smoking. I know when you see them on paper, it's like, oh God, and it is work to get these working well for you, but it is manageable. So heart health, huge. Okay, and we're here, Madeline is going to speak shortly, and Upta, so we're going to be talking about, you know, what do we have to do. The other thing is osteoporosis. As the estrogen falls out of our body, it also pulls away the strength from our bones. And, you know, then later in life you can be at risk of your hip fracture, very painful vertebral fracture in your back, or else just decline in, you know, your height over time. So we need to try and rebuild the bones as much as we can. And this comes through diet, exercise, and if you needed further investigations to see how strong your bones are. Okay, so workplace, and I know Josephine will come to this. Yeah, we're all professionals. We want to keep going and do the best job we can and achieve what we want and where we want to go. So we need support. So this is with talking with your manager if you feel comfortable to do so, that yes, this is going on for me. Okay, some simple things, and I certainly don't want to patronise you, but simple things about reminders, keeping notes, a journal, just to see what am I doing today. Talking to supportive work colleagues that you feel safe around, and that will, you know, hold your what you're sharing in confidence. Okay. Humour is good too. You know, we all know about the Menopause musical. Okay. So talk to your GP. So this is where I'll come in. Okay, and my colleagues. And I can point you in the direction of somebody good to talk to if you feel that I can't even get in with my GP, or my GP isn't interested in the menopause, okay? So don't feel you're on your own. Grand. So at this point, if you're in the doctor's surgery with me, you know, what you're looking at here is where can I go with this doctor? What's happening? So we need to figure out, well, is this the menopause? Okay. So for those of you that are over 45, the diagnosis is not a blood test. It's based on symptoms. What's happening? You know, with the hot flushes, change in mood, irritability, I can't sleep. I'm repelled by my other half. I don't want anything happening. Whatever, you know, this kind of thing. Right, that might be a bit heavy, but you know what I mean. Okay, so and then if you're less than 45, then we will diagnose it with a blood test, but we'll also be very mindful of the symptoms that are there and what you want help with. So again, the health check, it takes time, because all of those things I talked to you about, we need to be looking at to see, is this here, and do we need to look at this and respond? So we'll be going through all this, screening for heart disease and diabetes, and then screening for breast cancer. This is so important, okay? And this, I know this will come up in the questions, and I'm going to deal with it to the best that I can, okay? I don't want to start you on any form of hormone replacement therapy if I think there is an undetected breast cancer, or if there's a very high risk of a breast cancer there, okay? So we need to look for that. And then, I need to see that, the cervical health is good and the womb health is good. So to get an idea of your past smears and also your bleeding pattern, how that is. Okay? So then when it comes to have a good understanding of where you are in terms of your overall health, and you understand that too, and what we're going to work towards, to understand what you want help with. That's important that the doctor really is clear on that. And how would you like to feel? Okay, honest discussion. All right, and then what are your concerns? What would worry you? Okay, and how can I best support you with that? So, big thing here, it's a two-way street. It's commitment to optimizing your health through exercise, diet, and lifestyle. So important, because this is win-win. Okay, it'll help the menopause, and it's going to help all those other things that could easily crop up for us later in life. Heart disease, osteoporosis, diabetes, all of this. Okay, so based then on the female health check, we have a discussion on what's safest and what's most suitable for you. Okay, and then when we come into this, it can be a little bit of a minefield, but you can be supported on what's a good option. So the non-pharmaceutical, so the lifestyle, key. Okay, but then after that, we have hormonal replacement options, and there's lots here, and there's combinations, variations, strengths, doses, all of the above. And then there's non-hormonal options too that are worth having a discussion about. And again, it's going to be individual, so it'll be based on what you're coming in with and what I see is the safest for you, and then also the most effective, So, and then a good discussion about how to take the medication, when to start, what to watch out for, when to come back. So you have the support. And this is what I mean about good menopausal health for you. Okay, so there we go. We've covered this much. Hope I've been okay with the time. And I'm going to see you shortly for questions, okay? But I know the other ladies are going to speak first. All right. Thank you. Okay.
Hello and welcome everyone. I hope you can hear me. So Eva gave us a nice introduction to the process. My role here is to tell you a little bit about what we can do from our side to help ourselves, or how we can stay active through menopause and cope with those symptoms that are happening. So there's a lot going on, and the most important thing at this stage is to stay afloat. How do we balance workload? How do we balance home? How do we take care of elderly parents? And on top of that, we are experiencing all these changes in our body which we don't understand what's going on. So it is important to take a pause and try to understand what's going on, and then see how we can help ourselves. And I'm here to just provide some tips that might be helpful for you. Okay, so we learned what is menopause, and Eva explained it beautifully, so I will not go into that. It's all about the changes in our hormone levels, the stages at which these changes occur, and the symptoms that it brings on. And what I will do here is show you how we can make small changes and introduce healthy habits like exercise in our lives so we can address those symptoms. Okay, we talked about the stages. So we know premenopause is when everything's stable and you have normal monthly cycles. But then suddenly you come to a stage when this changes, and the cycles become irregular and the hormones fluctuate. And that's perimenopause. And the importance here is to know that this is a stage that occurs and that it can last for years sometimes. So to be aware that this is a stage when the changes are taking place and it will pass, and the symptoms are associated with this will also subside. But how we can get through this stage? What are the things we can do to manage? So the changes that we are experiencing is caused by changes in the level of estrogen and other reproductive hormones, which Eva talked about, and the levels change over time. And it starts changing at about the age of 40. The hormones start declining. It becomes more prominent in the perimenopause, which is usually around 45 years of age, and the average age for menopause to set in is about 51, but it can vary, and perimenopause can last a few years before and a few years after that when the levels are fluctuating. And what we mean by fluctuating, a little graph because I love graphs, sorry about that, I don't want to scare you. It just shows you that everything's nice and regular and follows a pattern, and then suddenly it goes crazy. It's all over the place. And then again, when you're past that stage, it reaches a stage when everything is stable again. Okay, and it's this stage where things are fluctuating that we experience symptoms. It's because these hormones play important role in normal physiologic functions, in the way your heart functions, in the way your metabolism works, in the way your muscles work, in the way your bones work. So it affects a lot of different things in our life, and that is why it's important that we understand that. This is from a report that was published by the NHS, and it says 82% women will experience mild to severe symptoms of menopause. 82% is almost all of us. So we're all in this together, and therefore the important thing is to recognize what's happening and to see what we can do about it. There are 34 symptoms of menopause that has been described. 34. It's crazy. You may not experience all of them, you might experience none of them, and it might be mild or severe and a combination of those. But they're all caused by the changes in hormones, and we can do something from our side to address them. In perimenopause, when the hormones are fluctuating, what you see is short-term symptoms, and when you go into postmenopause, when the hormone becomes stable, what you can experience is long-term effects of the reduction in the hormone levels, and this can bring on risk of long-term illness. There is evidence available from research which shows that exercise can reduce these symptoms and can improve your health long-term and reduce the risk of disease. And we will see, what I will do is take you through specific exercises that you can do to address each of those symptoms and risk factors. Why is this a risk? It's because menopause and the changes in the estrogen levels affect the functioning of all of the physiologic systems, including your heart, your lung. It leads to loss of muscle mass, changes in muscle metabolism, decrease in bone density because there is more reabsorption than deposition of bone material. Slow metabolism means there is fat accumulating in the body if you're not managing your calories properly, and is changing the balance between muscle mass and fat mass. And that can be very difficult to manage in terms of weight gain. And all of this is further complicated by anxiety and mood changes and other problems. Not sleeping well, and all of this then leads to lack of energy and fatigue, or feeling tired all the time. So what can we do about it? I'm going to mainly focus on exercise interventions. I'm not an expert in diet, but there is definitely a need for a nutritional intervention to support the exercise that you're going to be doing. So exercise can help you improve your cardiovascular and respiratory health, can improve bone strength and muscle, can improve balance, flexibility, and reduce pain and alleviate the symptoms of fatigue. I will talk about specific exercises and show you how you can target those symptoms. So exercise have been shown to improve bone health and heart health, and Madeline is going to talk in more details about heart health in a few minutes, sorry. Exercise helps you improve your sleep and therefore have better mood and mindfulness. So the recommended exercise, and this is by the American College of Sports Medicine, they recommend 3 types of exercise for menopausal women, consisting of aerobic, resistance, and flexibility. And you can combine these exercises based on what symptoms you're experiencing, tailor it to your needs and your fitness levels so that what you have is a program personalized for you. Aerobic exercise, moderate intensity, what does that mean? It means you're exercising at a level that you increase your heart rate to about 160 to 170 beats per minute. That's 60% of what your maximum heart rate can be. That's moderate intensity activity. How can you do that? If you walk at 5 kilometers per hour, your heart rate will go up to that level. So that's kind of defining what a moderate intensity workout is. So a moderate intensity aerobic workout for about 30 minutes a day. And then some strength building exercises. In 2 days a week, you take care of your muscles and make sure in the week you're addressing all of the muscles of the body. And I'll show you examples of exercises that you can do very easily at your home in comfort. And flexibility exercises that keeps the joints and keeps the mobility, keeps you moving, so they are very good for you. And we'll take a look at some examples. First and foremost, building core muscle strength. And there are very simple exercises where you use your own body weight to build up the muscles. Core muscles, very important. They support your back and they support the body weight. They carry the body weight when you're moving around. So their strength in the core muscles is extremely important. These are some examples of exercises that you can do. The wall squat uses your own body weight to build core muscle strength. Very safe, easy to do. So these exercises can help build up the strength in your core muscles. Aerobic exercises are very good for improving heart and respiratory health. Aerobic exercises could be running, walking, cycling. So low impact, moderate intensity exercises, either you're using your own body weight to exercise or the weight bearing may not be important if you're doing cycling or swimming exercises, but you're still working up your heart rate and you're getting that moderate intensity. So aerobic exercise is very good for improving your cardiovascular health, for respiratory fitness, and just 30 minutes per day is sufficient to give you the fitness that you need to protect you from long-term illness. Resistance exercises, you can use free weights to work different muscles and joints, or you can use elastic bands. What you're doing in this strength training exercises is you're applying a load to each of the muscles. The muscle is working against a load or a resistance, and this is helping the muscle to build strength. When you do that, what happens is you preserve the muscle mass. Muscle is something, if you use it, you can keep it. So the more you use it, the better it is for you. So it can help you tackle the problem of losing your muscles due to changes in that comes in with menopause. I like this one very much because COVID meant we have to work out at home. We cannot go to the gym. How do you work out at home? This gives us a solution and an alternative. Elastic bands, you can purchase them in any pharmacy or sports goods shop. They come in different strengths, and you can design different exercises yourself to see that which muscle is working. And when the muscle is working, you will feel it in that muscle. So there are a large number of exercises that you can do that addresses all the different muscles in your body. And if you have like a pain or a specific need for one particular muscle, you could tailor it more to your needs. So osteoporosis, with menopause and with the low levels of estrogen, bone deposition is reduced. So bone material is not getting deposited as much as it should be. As the bone material is lost, the bone becomes porous and fragile, and that's the cause for osteoporosis. We can change that by putting in some regular exercises in time. How do we do that? So what you do is exercises where you apply a load to the bone. This stimulates deposition of more bone material. Like a very good example is hopping on the spot. That's very easy to do, and that's loading all of the bones in your body very nicely. Running, jogging, and brisk walking, all very good for loading the bone. These are also some exercises that can help you to apply more load on the bone and preserve the bone mass. One concern could be if the osteoporotic changes have already set in and you're at a risk of injuring your bone. There is a way of converting those exercises in such a way that you can do it safely. And I'll show you an example here. So normally how you would put load on the spine is by doing a back lift or back extension on the floor like that. But how can you change it so that it's now safe? You do it on a chair and you use a resistance band to apply that extra load which the bone needs, like you can see at the bottom there. Next, flexibility exercises, stretching out all those joints, increasing mobility. I like the names of the yoga poses. I always find them very interesting, like cat pose or cow pose. Very interesting. That's how I get my daughter to do the exercises. Show me the cow. Okay, so we should also do some exercises that helps us build our balance. These are just some examples. Now comes the big question of managing weight. And this is what I find most difficult. I love my food, so it's very difficult to manage calorie. That's no excuse. Exercise and diet is very important to make sure that you manage your calories well. Choose the food you are eating very carefully to make sure that you're enjoying it and it's not going to give you those extra calories that are hard to get rid of. And along with that, a moderate intensity aerobic exercise program can help you maintain the amount of calorie that you're expending. A balance between these two will help you to lose that extra weight or even prevent putting on the extra weight going forward. Fatigue results from having low energy. Well, it has evidence in research shows that if you do regular exercise, have a healthy meal, and you're getting a good night's sleep, it reduces fatigue and you feel more energized. So building up a habit of doing or spending a few minutes where you're exercising and you're relaxing can help you reduce the symptoms of fatigue. Exercise reduces chronic inflammation, and that helps you to reduce the joint pain, which is sometimes the underlying cause of the fatigue. So this is a typical exercise plan that you might have, and you can tailor it to your needs. So if you are not exercising at all, you would start at a low level, do 10 minutes of one type of exercise, take a break, and then build it up slowly. As you start enjoying and you can do more, you can build it up so that you get your 30 minutes of aerobic exercise, and on alternate days, you do 20 minutes of your muscle strength exercise. More important to do the stretching exercises every day, because that keeps your joints flexible and mobile. And then you should do the weight-bearing exercises, which is for your bone health, and that should be kind of a daily intervention. And then the flexibility and balance exercises. Okay, so if you give yourself, say, 45 minutes to 1 hour every day, you will be a healthier and happier you. So I think that's an investment we can afford. What to avoid? That is always very important. Avoid high impact exercises that involve sudden movement because they can cause injury or damage. We don't want that. Also avoid burnout or stress. If you're stressed about doing exercise, it's not going to be helpful. So you should enjoy what you're doing. So choose the type of exercise or timing, or the people with whom you exercise sometimes makes a lot of difference. And if exercise is the last thing kept for the day, you're not going to do it. You're too tired. And always dress comfortably. If you are exercising and not comfortable, if you're sweating, too hot, or the clothes are too tight, that's not going to be helpful. So exercise is something that you should be doing when you enjoy it. So you should plan in such a way that you can enjoy it that way. So just to summarize, benefits of exercise to regulate the symptoms of menopause, you can say, or reduce them. It helps to manage weight, it helps to improve your cardiorespiratory function, improves muscle strength, flexibility, balance, improves bone health, and all of these contributes to improved mood, a good feeling about yourself, and that's what is most important. As I said, I'm not an expert in nutrition, but eating a healthy diet is always helpful. Lots of proteins and nutrients in the diet, and make sure there's variety in the food. Finally, the elephant in the room. You should be aware that you're not alone and there's help out there. So we should ask for help when you need it.
Hi, how are you? As you said earlier, my name's Madeline and I work with CRE, the West of Ireland Heart and Stroke Charity. So we're just really grateful to be invited today because it's important to, when we're thinking of menopause, that we don't think of it in isolation. We think of our overall health, and part of that is our cardiovascular health. And one of our tags with CRE, our tagline, we're moving too fast, would be to own it, check it, sort it. And that basically means just to own it is to be proactive about your health, to think about health and well-being and what that means to you, and to understand it and get the information and knowledge around it. To check it is to work with your GP practitioner, your practice nurse, just to know what your risk is, what that means to you, and what are the things that you can do to have an impact on that risk. And to sort it is probably the hardest bit of all, is to make those changes, to make those lifestyle modifications that can have a really positive impact on us as we age. So the reason when it comes to women's health that we like to try and get a platform to talk about women at heart or women's heart health is because it's underestimated. Women in general don't realise that their risk is as high as men's. Traditionally, and it shows from different studies, we all tended to believe that heart disease, heart attack, stroke, that was a very male-dominated area, but it's not. Our risk is equal to men, and heart disease is actually the leading cause of death for women in Ireland. So I guess we get caught up because we tend to think of other health problems naturally. So like heart disease is actually almost 6 times more likely to cause death of women in Ireland than breast cancer. Yet breast cancer is kind of to the fore of our mind from a very early age. We're learning to breast check and to screen for it. So I guess we need to have that same kind of emphasis from an early age on heart disease and cardiovascular disease. And actually, when I say heart disease, you don't hear it as much as heart disease. You normally hear it as cardiovascular disease, which is an umbrella term for coronary heart disease, for peripheral vascular disease, and for stroke. And it's usually associated with these kind of fatty deposits, these plaque deposits that build up in the blood vessels, and you'll hear that word atherosclerosis. And it leaves us at risk of developing clots. So there are many risk factors. There's no one cause for cardiovascular disease, but there are lots of things that can contribute to it. And it's important for us to have an understanding of what they are. And the best way to do that is to break it into two categories. The risk factors that we can't change. We can't do anything about it. As we age, it's just important to know and to kind of think of ourselves, which of these do we identify with it. Age is for all of us. There's nothing we can do, can't slow it down, can't stop it. Naturally, as we age, our risk will rise. Ethnicity, different ethnic groups have different prevalence for cardiovascular disease, and you can break that down even to prevalences for blood pressure or cholesterol. Our family history, we just need to, if we can, have access to it. Knowing our family history just helps us to know when we should start having those health checks. As I said, with men and women, we know our risk is identical, but there is a difference, and Ava had mentioned it earlier. It's the time frame. For men, that risk rises much earlier than women. And that is because of the menopause. We have that protection from estrogen up until we become postmenopausal, and our risk starts to rise much more rapidly after that. So all of these, as I said, you can't do anything about them except be conscious of them and, you know, as I said, kind of individualize them for yourself and see then where do your health checks fall into play accordingly. Then we have the risk factors that we can have an impact on, and we really shouldn't underestimate the impact that we have, because we know that cardiovascular disease, heart attack and stroke is 80% preventable. So if we know early and we bed down some good habits, good routines, good consciousness of our health and well-being as we age, we can really try to put positive things in place to help us age more healthily. So we know with smoking, naturally, it's the best thing that you can do for your health, your overall health and your cardiovascular health. I'm going to focus just on blood pressure and cholesterol for today, because this would be a whole session in itself if we were to break them down individually. Exactly what we looked at: physical inactivity, exercise. We can't underestimate the benefit of exercise to our heart health. If we have a diagnosis of diabetes, an unhealthy diet, if we suffer chronic obesity, excess alcohol or stress. But as I said, in order to fit it into the time, our focus is going to be on cholesterol and blood pressure for now. And also on this, which is menopause. So it's the less discussed risk factor. And menopause, as I said, it comes into play there when we're looking at the risk between men and women. It's that little bit later, once we lose that estrogen depletion, those hormonal changes, our risk for cardiovascular disease rises, because estrogen has protective qualities on our blood vessels, and it helps to keep them nice and open and patent. So obviously, as the estrogen levels drop, we lose that protective quality in the blood vessels. Like was mentioned earlier, the way we carry our weight is different. So we tend to, earlier on, I think we'd say we'd carry it more towards the hip and bum, and it moves more towards central weight. And that central weight raises our risk factor for both cholesterol and for blood pressure. And in cholesterol itself, estrogen plays a role in cholesterol in helping to maintain our cholesterol levels. So when we lose estrogen from the body, then that has a dramatic effect on our cholesterol. And we can look at that in more detail later. So naturally then, if we are somebody who is unlucky to have ended up with an early menopause for whatever reason, their risk is going to be significantly higher again for coronary heart disease. So it is just something that we have to be really not fearful of, but conscious of, because we know, like I said, those lifestyle changes, if we put them in place, we can try and understand our risk and reduce it. So one of those key things that we can do for ourselves is to look after our blood pressure, to maintain a healthy blood pressure. So blood pressure is basically the force of the blood leaving the heart and circulating around the body. So if you think of the heart as a pump, if that pump is overworking our blood pressure levels, that pressure is rising, and then we have what you call high blood pressure, or it could be referred to as hypertension. So we need to maintain a healthy level of pressure for our blood pressure, and ideally that would be, an optimal blood pressure actually would be 120/80, but we know that our blood pressure fluctuates throughout the day. So on average, we would like to see it below the 140/90. Unless you are somebody who perhaps has diabetes or has some other medical condition that affects your blood pressure, then we would like to see it, and if you're on a blood pressure tablet, you'd like to see that lower again at the 130/80. So I guess the big thing then with blood pressure is how often do you check it? And the guidelines will tell us to check it more often as we age, a minimum of at least once a year, but ideally if we could check our blood pressure opportunistically. So if we're at the GP for another reason, and you could ask them just to check it for you then. The pharmacy is a great place to have it checked, or sometimes you'll often have it in the workplace where there's workplace screenings. So just to take the opportunity to know your blood pressure, because once you know your own numbers, you know your own baseline, you can watch it if you start to feel that it is creeping up, and you can have further investigations like the 24 hours. There's lots of different things that we can do to try and get a better understanding of our blood pressure if it starts to rise. And the reason that we really focus on people taking control of their own blood pressure is because it is known as the silent killer, which again is a horrible expression, but it got that name because it's symptom-free. So you imagine when we're talking about that pressure of the heart pumping and forcing the blood around the body, that, you know, you imagine that that kind of feeling would give you symptoms, but with blood pressure it's symptom free. So unless we're checking it, we won't know that it's starting to rise. So it's really important to check our blood pressure. And because we lose that estrogen depletion, it's especially important once we are postmenopausal, because the chances of developing high blood pressure rise. And the second part then that we need to look at when we're having our health screenings is to look at cholesterol. I mentioned it there earlier again with the estrogen. It has a direct impact on our cholesterol, because while we have lots of lovely levels of estrogen flowing around the body, it's helping to regulate our cholesterol. So it's having the opposite effect naturally. When we lose estrogen from the body, our LDLs, or bad cholesterol, starts to rise, and it also starts to reduce our good cholesterol. And I think a good kind of understanding of your cholesterol is to think of it like a pipe cleaner. The LDLs are sort of the cholesterol that we naturally produce ourselves. We could be unfortunate and overproduce it, or we may be taking in excess amounts in the diet, and they are the ones that build up on the inside of those blood vessels. That soft fatty substance that I was talking about earlier are the LDLs. And ideally, if we have a good balance in our diet, that exercise, fruit, veg, fibre, that raises our HDLs, our good cholesterols. And typically we would like to get our HDLs nice and high so that as it flows through, it would mop up the excess of the LDLs and take it to the liver to break it down. But I guess we're fighting against the tide a little bit once our estrogen levels deplete, because our estrogen levels will start to raise. Without the estrogen, our LDLs naturally start to raise, and our HDLs start to reduce. So we have to be really conscious of trying to raise up those HDLs to get that balance. So we'd like to see our total cholesterol to be less than 5. Your LDLs, your bad cholesterol, when you get your blood test back, you'd like to see that that's less than 3. And your HDLs for women, we want to raise that up as high as we can and try and get it above the 1.2. And for men, it's 1. And triglycerides are another type of just a sugary kind of fatty substance that also build up within the blood vessels. And we'd like to see that at less than 1.7. So again, it comes back to how often do you check your cholesterol? Again, about once a year to have your cholesterol checked. And I suppose with these things, as I said, you're typically, again, there's no one symptom that would let you know that your cholesterol was rising. So I guess in some ways we're asking you to consider going to a GP maybe once a year when you're feeling well, and to have those health checks put in place, just so that you can kind of monitor your numbers, know your risk, and feel that you're a little bit in control of it. And I guess it's a foreign idea to, we all go to the GP when you have symptoms, but to try and be more preventative about it, to think ahead and to do yourself that favour of having one visit a year that you have your health screening done. So because we're talking about cardiovascular disease, I just wanted to focus a little bit on heart attack, because in all that I've said there's that understanding that our risk is going to rise post-menopause. And for a heart attack, particularly in women, we have different symptoms, different signs. The typical signs are that kind of TV image that you have of that pressure on the chest, and that's very common in both men and women, that sort of shortness of breath or that discomfort, the tingling on the arm, the neck, and the back. But for women, there's also more subtle signs, and that can be confused with or kind of fobbed off, thinking that it's other things, or we're tired, there's a lot on, maybe it is just part of the menopause. So sometimes we ignore them. So it is important to be conscious of them. That kind of dizziness, that heartburn-like feeling, a lot of people would fob that kind of symptom off. Cold sweats, unusual levels of fatigue and tiredness, nausea, vomiting. They're all really common symptoms for women. So from a heart attack perspective, it's to make yourself aware of the symptoms and to never be shy in coming forward with them. It is much better to come forward for a false alarm than to ignore them and let them fester. And on that note, I just have a small, short video.
It started out like a totally normal day. Okay, move objection deadline to the third line after survey. Oh, honey, for when you always use the verb estar. What are you doing down there? Did you finish your breakfast? Ow. Whew. Don't hit your brother. Honey, you have to eat something. Here. Okay, 5 minutes to carpool. Where's my coffee?
You okay, Mom?
Oh, I'm fine. Sandwich orders. What do you want?
Almond butter and jelly. Spaghetti. You sure you're okay?
I'm fine, sweetie.
I am so late. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Hey, honey. You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You sure?
Oh, yeah. Here.
Acai, my favorite. See you guys later.
Where are your shoes? Put your shoes back on, please. Go help your sister. We're going in 3 minutes. Oh my God, what am I doing? I forgot to cut off the crust. Voila. Shoes on, potty if you need it. Honey, get your sister. Okay, here. You sure? Nobody move. I'm getting a dustpan. Oh.
Mom! I think you're having a heart attack.
Honey, do I look like the type of person who has a heart attack? I'm just gonna sit down. I'm totally fine. Don't forget to wear the high socks with the shin guards.
Forget about the shin guards, Mom.
Come on, Mrs. Underdog is not gonna wait. Whoa. Okay. 9, 1, 1. Hi, sorry to bother you. I think I might be having a little heart attack. Nothing really, just some nausea, tightening of the jaw, dizziness, shortness of breath, muscle pain, achiness, this terrible pressure in my chest. Oh, really? They can be here in how long? 2 minutes. Can you make it 10? I thought I had gas. Turns out I was having a heart attack. Heart disease is the #1 killer of American women. So now I take care of my heart and I tell the women in my life to do the same.
Sounds great, by the way.
That's nice, sweetie, but that's not my heart. That is. Make it your mission to save your life and the lives of the women you love. Find out more from the American Heart Association at goredforwomen.org.
So I guess the key message is just that we listen to our bodies, that it's okay to come forward with a false alarm. If it doesn't feel right, then check it out. Don't sit on it, don't fester on it, don't second guess it. There's plenty of help and support out there. Nobody minds anybody coming forward and it being a false alarm. Much better to check it out and to support each other, I guess, is the key. Thank you.
So we're open for questions. So I mean, there's only a few of us here, but I might ask the 3 presenters to sit up here because we're recording the event because we've had a little bit of technical issues this morning. Poor Kathy,
it's just added to the stress. So we had a few questions that have come in to us. So I might start with this, and it might give courage to people in the room to raise a question then. Do I need to use the mics here?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So one of the questions that came in, and I'm not going to use the names just in case people wanted us. Is it true that if you take HRT, that you will still have to go through the menopause when you stop taking HRT?
Do you want me to answer that, Josephine?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so the question is, if you take HRT, the person is asking, are we just kicking the can down the road, and then once I stop it, I'll get full-on menopause? So, when you take the HRT, this is going to work on the symptoms that we talked about, you know, the early onset symptoms like the hot flushes. Then later on, we'll say the hot flushes, poor sleep, insomnia, irritability, mood, and then later on the symptoms of the vaginal dryness and the itch. So that'll be working on that for however number of years you're taking it. But when you stop the HRT, you will get some symptoms, okay, but you're going to be later in life then, okay. And how I would answer that question is, you know, you're not going to, you will get some of the symptoms when you stop it, okay, but is that enough for you to say that, well, I'm just going to suffer without HRT then, because what's the point? I'm going to get the symptoms later on, you know. The other thing about the HRT that I'll add with that is, just with what was spoken about, if you're starting to take it early, there's that protective effect in the heart, and then all, and then there's all the symptoms it's going to be working on. So,
Okay.
The question.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, right.
Another question that's kind of a continuation on of that. I'd be grateful if the panel would share their views on the increasingly significant body of research that suggests that HRT is both safe and effective regarding symptom control, disease prevention, and improving quality of life. And then the next question is, what sort of menopause policy would the panel feel we should be looking at implementing in NUI Galway? So the first one is really the body of research, and I suppose this is really, when we started discussing this, it was the myths that were there from the past in terms of, you know, there was a lot of bad publicity, press around HRT and how things have changed now in the body of research that's out there now in regard to HRT now being safe.
Yeah, so that's a huge thing, and this is like what's really changed women's health within the last 10 years for sure. And the fact that a lot of GPs are really wanting to get upskilled in this area, because we now know that it is safe to prescribe on an individual basis. Like if there are risk factors, well, as a doctor you have to be very vigilant then, but otherwise what we worried about before, i.e. that HRT caused breast cancer, we now know that study, that there was a lot of inherent problems within that study, and it was widely publicised, and the message that it gave was wrong, unfortunately, because it stopped women for years and years accessing HRT out of fear. So now we know that treating the menopause not only helps symptoms, but it also helps you with background physiological areas such as the heart, your bones, and so it's positive.
Okay. So today we heard a lot about not just the medical interventions, but also the exercise. And then when we talk about heart health, I suppose what I took away from it is just something that as somebody who came to the university from health, I'll always remember asking the first one, a really silly question of a cardiologist. Why do you go, and when you're doing an angio, why do you go in through their right hand when your heart is on your left? Because I think we have this perception that your heart is over here. I was very quickly told your heart's in the middle of your chest, not on either side. It doesn't make. But the one thing that I took away that reiterated what they said, the numbers are really important. Managing your numbers, knowing your numbers. And that really is a takeaway, that our blood pressure, knowing what that is and keeping that in check, but also our cholesterol and knowing, because I think sometimes we we say, oh, it's fine, but we don't really know what the numbers are. So taking that as a takeaway today, getting on top of that now is really important.
It is really important to know your numbers. And one thing that I do like around this kind of preventative cardiology is the idea that it is something that you can have control over. There's lots of other things that happen to us health-wise where we have to hand over to the experts. But in this particular area, when it comes to our blood pressure and cholesterol, we can really work alongside them, because yes, of course, there are times where you will have to be prescribed a medication, but even then the lifestyle modifications will still have an impact. So the earlier, even though it's never too late to start, the earlier that we get an understanding of our blood pressure and our cholesterol and the impact that the likes of diet and exercise, stress management can have on that, then the more power we have in kind of being a player in controlling it ourselves and working with the GP to reduce our risk.
Okay. Another question has come in here, and I think, not sure about other people, but it's questioned. When I saw it, I thought, I like this one. Any tips on managing brain fog and forgetfulness? I suppose it's one of those symptoms, and I suppose, I mean, what I do is I nearly have to write everything down now, whether that's going to the shop or for work. But it's, in terms of, there's lots of symptoms there, but, how do we manage that?
Yeah. Well, okay, so thanks. So what I would say here is a couple of things before you enter the room with me, where I would talk about how estrogen will help that, okay? And if it was safe for me to prescribe estrogen, that's there. But before you get to that point, I think the first thing is just see what's here and recognise it, okay? And when you realise that, God, I've just forgotten something, or I've had a complete lapse in my memory, that could be quite upsetting, and it could create a lot of feelings within. So first of all, see what's here and bring in some level of acceptance where, okay, this is happening. And then if you see it's happening maybe a little bit more repeatedly, okay, that's enough to say that I'm going to need help with this, all right? Now, in the meantime, while you're accessing help, simple things like what you said, Josephine, about making lists and keeping that list with you. So if you have a journal or a notebook, reminders on your phone, okay, it's nothing wrong with that. Even if you are maybe trying to detach a little bit from your phone, but something like that could help. But then, coming from what I believe in, just be kind to yourself too, like not give yourself a hard time that, yeah, this is happening, and it doesn't mean that like you're a failure, and it doesn't mean that your life is falling apart. It's just a symptom that's here that can be managed. Now, the interesting thing is when I see females back to me that have started the HRT, if it's safe for them, that's one thing that can easily be rectified, where they say, oh my God, my memory is so much better. Simple things like that. And it's lovely to see that impact for a woman. So that is what I would say.
Okay. So,
just have a question,
yeah.
Just a query here to the panel. How long is it safe to take HRT? Can you take HRT for forever if it makes you feel better and improves mood and brain fog? Is there a definitive time?
Okay, well, it's a good question, all right. And the safest answer is that you cannot take it indefinitely, okay? And the main reason for that is for every decade that we get older as a woman, our risk of breast cancer increases, okay? So that is there. So if I was prescribing without limit a HRT to a woman in her 70s, 80s, I would feel uncomfortable, because, I did say that it doesn't cause breast cancer, but if it's a breast cancer that is estrogen sensitive, okay, so it responds to estrogen, and I'm giving the woman estrogen, that's not okay. So, this is where when we start HRT, there's regular review, maybe every 6 months, to see how you're doing, and a good discussion. And you keep on chatting about the risks and the benefits. So the benefits we've talked about, but the risks are there too. So if you find that, you're gaining weight, okay, we need to look at the form of the estrogen because your risk of a blood clot increases, okay. If something happens where breast cancer does occur, then, you know, you have to be taken off the HRT. So you cannot be on it indefinitely. I will tell you, and I'm sure that most GPs who are in this area could admit to this, I do have 1 or 2 patients who are later in life and they will not come off the HRT because it makes them feel good. And they'll say, I'm not giving it up, but they know their risks. I'm not entirely comfortable with that, and they know that I'm uncomfortable with that. But at the stage when it comes in, if you start it early, we'll say at that age around 51, 52, even maybe 48, whatever, you know, that's where you're going to get all the benefits lasting, okay? And it is nice to come in early rather than later. Yeah.
When can you start HRT? Does it have to be in perimenopause or along the way? And I just wanted to comment, my mother is 76, and about 2 years ago she told me she was still taking HRT, and I sent her back to the doctor, and I said, sort it out. There's no way you can be on HRT for 20 years. And she said, well, I'm not having the night sweats. I said, go and discuss it again with your doctor.
I know.
You need to start reducing it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a conversation then for her and her doctor. But you see, she's probably very well sold on it and like, I'm not giving this up. But so when can you start it, okay? So remember I talked to you about the perimenopause and then the menopause. So, you know, you can start it in either phases. And remember, I told you there's lots of different combinations and variations of HRT. So it will get the right match for you. Because in the perimenopause, you're still having some bleeding. So we'd create a regime that allows you to bleed, okay? And then in the menopause, you're not bleeding, so you don't need to be, I don't need to give you a regime that will cause you to bleed, if that makes sense.
And what about after the menopause? Because that's, you said post-menopause there, so how long, like the menopause, how long does that actually last? Is it? And then the post-menopausal phase comes in.
Okay, so the menopause is where you've had, you look back in the past 12 months, you've had no period. So that's menopause, okay? Then after that, the phase after that is the post-menopause, okay? So that's where you have no periods, okay? And then that will imply then that there is no, the estrogen is falling and will be depleted, okay?
So is it too late at that point then to go on HRT?
No, it's not. It's not. But remember, each case is individual, okay? Yeah. So it's about putting the full picture together on the health check. So looking at your weight, looking at your blood pressure, looking what other health conditions you have, okay? You know, and namely any risk factors for breast cancer. And so yeah, does that answer that question? Yeah? Okay.
Just a small comment on that, like, so eventually the hormone levels go down and they stabilize, and the symptoms should subside at that stage. I think that's where you should be weaned off the HRT.
But I suppose my issue with that is nobody can ever tell me when it's going to end. You know, nobody seems to know.
Yeah.
So a 75-year-old told me she was out of it, but that's a bit long to be waiting. You know what I mean?
It is, and it's too long to be waiting. But it's about continuing the discussion with your GP that's looking after this, okay? Knowing that being fully informed and aware of what can happen in any stage of life as a woman, and then, you know, the added risks that are there, and weighing up benefits and risks. So I will say weighing up benefits and risks rather than saying risks and benefits.
Yeah.
You know, so it is half full.
So is there a kind of an age where you'd be saying, okay, we need to start thinking about weaning yourself off this now? Would that be sort of in your early 60s or?
Yeah, certainly by early 60s, yeah. Okay, but then there will be the outliers.
Yeah. And,
you know, I have to remember, once if somebody's fully informed, you know, to respect their decisions, but I'll still be fully informing them.
We've one here and one there. Yep.
Just from a HR perspective and a manager.
Sorry, can you project a little bit so the camera?
Here, I'll.
Just from a HR and manager supporting perspective, what do you think we should cover in a menopause policy?
Okay. Well, Okay, it's a good question, and we've been speaking about this together. I mean, I think the first thing is, to raise awareness. Like, I think as an example, the university has done so much for, EDI and LGBT plus, and I hope I haven't missed any letter there. So like the huge work that's been done there, I think the first thing is raising awareness. And, like if you look at, the workforce in Ireland, about 1.5 million are working, females are working from 15 to the age of 65. So this is a big workforce. So if you look at the group that's menopausal there, this is a very important group that needs to be acknowledged. So acknowledgement first of all, and then seeing what's needed. But I think, Josephine, you could probably answer.
Yeah, so I mean, I've certainly read a lot of different policies and stuff that has gone on. The NHS is probably far more ahead of us in regard to where we're at. We're just at the beginning of the stages in developing that policy. We don't have as much of the kind of considerations that other organisations have looked at in terms of uniforms, because in many industries the uniforms are very restrictive to females in terms of they're quite heavy to meet health and safety requirements, and that in itself, if you're really struggling with, like even when I came in here today I was thinking I need a fan in here today, and sometimes that can be restrictive in itself. So that won't be something we will necessarily have to have a big part of, but we do need to look at the space area where you do need, I mean, let's be honest, there are times probably when actually you don't need to be going out to your car to get a few minutes to gather yourself on a particular day if you're having a really busy day or it's just a quite emotional day. And that can be anything from you've just had an argument with your partner or the kids before you left the house because you're just in one of those emotional days. It's not acceptable anymore that you have to go into your car because you're feeling like that. We need to be looking at the spaces. So we started to have that conversations with the new Director of Buildings and Estates. And they're the kind of things that we should be getting out of, a hybrid policy, that there should be space utilised so that we can use them for those kind of quiet areas. Every time I see something like that on LinkedIn, I take pictures. So I have all the pictures of what I'd like that room to look like. And then we need to, have those rooms so that we can actually use them when we need to use them. And then as we go through the menopause, what I want is that we can have an open conversation that in exactly the same way when, you were in school and you had really bad period pain, you'd go to your teacher and you'd need to, you might need to go home or whatever. Now that we have other policies, so that's why I certainly prioritised the hybrid working policy over the menopause, because I think that will support those ideas where people are struggling, because you may have a week that you're really struggling with, you might not have slept, you might have had, and they're the kind of things. Now there's a whole education piece for managers, and I think we can't forget that we've lots of male colleagues who have wives, who've had mothers, who've sisters, that they also need, because I think sometimes that's part of the discussion that we sometimes forget, that if you're having a really bad week, you're having a really bad week, but your partner, your kids are probably putting up with that really bad week as well. And how do we bring that into the conversation? Because I don't think it's just a female conversation. Our colleagues need to know that there's lots of things going on. And I suppose when we're doing a menopause policy, we then need to look at the other end, where we do have individuals who are, maybe difficulty in trying to conceive. So we do need to look at both ends of that journey for women. So that's kind of where we're looking at. But our policy is going to be more, not as prescriptive, because I think it really is about each unit being supportive of our colleagues. And I think sometimes we sometimes kind of feel that we have to go on this journey on our own, and we don't, because you know what, within 3 or 4 feet there's probably somebody else who's had all of those symptoms, who's gone on that journey maybe a bit ahead of you or maybe a little bit behind you, and we need to be there to support each other's, and I think sometimes we can be, as women, we can be as much critical of each other as we can be supportive, and this is really about us being supportive. So getting as much voice into that policy is really important. But there's aspects of the policy that in other organisations will be really important, but for us they won't. So trying to focus on the kind of supports around health and wellbeing that we can do for women, whether it's, and we were just saying that focusing a bit more on the heart health, the exercise, I think is really, really important, because the GP can prescribe medication for you, but we have to take responsibility for our own health. So even when Anya was saying, you can build your bone health by jumping up and down, I'm thinking that's why they made us do jumping jacks when we were younger. And I'm thinking simple things like that there's nothing stopping us as a group of women to say we've plenty space within the university, and why aren't we out walking 2 or 3 times a week as a group, chatting about how our life experiences are going, because sometimes maybe chatting to somebody else who's going through it might be easier than taking it out on somebody else at home. And I'm sure the partners would be delighted with that too. But I think just sharing that I'm having a really bad week, or I've just had because I think they're the kind of silent things that we don't discuss. We talk about the HRT, we talk about the brain fog, but we're not really talking about there's lots of other things that go on in menopause that affect relationships, and just trying to, how have you navigate that? And, I think they're the kind of conversations that we can support each other with, that you might not want to, that you just need kind of support in terms of, well, I've gone through that. This is what has happened for me. And sharing those experiences, I think, are really important. But even somebody just saying to you, you need to go back and talk to your GP, because maybe you need a bit more support in that area. So that's kind of what we want the policy to be, more about supportive rather than being prescriptive of the person needs to have 3 days off per month or whatever, because that's just a recipe for disaster. It's being about supportive and having that kind of community, because if you look at our strategy, it's all about community, the metal of whatever. I think we need to have a community where we share our experiences, what we've learned, something that we've tried, some exercise program that we found really healthy, or maybe work to build one that is good for each of us, that support each of us. Because there are days, and we've had this, there's days when you probably don't want to have the healthy food, the chocolate would be great, climbing into the bed with a movie would be great, and having somebody that would encourage you, let's go for a walk, or, that may be what you need on that particular day. So that's the policy. And we've there's bones of the kind of headings, principles, but we need you, because we can just drop a policy. We need you to say that this would work, or it wouldn't work, or these are the challenges in the unit that I work in that might make that policy a bit harder to implement. So that's what we need you for. Now, somebody else had a question over here.
Thanks. It was more about if somebody has significant risk factors like family history, breast cancer, or whatever it might be. Is it like, would there be lower levels of HRT that would be recommended, or would it be just, no, we just have to go for something different? Or would it be do it for a shorter period, or what would it, what kind of, I know you can't generalise, but in general, what would?
Well, so I suppose it will depend on the risk factor, okay? So, and there are other options that are non-hormonal based, okay? So they're not made up of estrogen and progestogen, okay? And there's a few good options there, okay? One of them actually is a form of an antidepressant, okay? And it's not been prescribed for depression, but it's been prescribed for the symptoms of menopause, mostly the hot flushes and the poor sleep, and that can be quite effective. And then there's some other options, and they're called SERMs, so they're a version of the hormone, but it's not the hormone, okay? So that's something there. So it's not like if you have, certain risk factors that prevent you from getting estrogen and progestogen combination, or whichever version it is, there are other options, okay? And that's why, and I know that there'll be people there that think, well, no, that's not for me. I heard once I can never take estrogen, so there's nothing for me. That's not true, and that's why it's so important to go and seek help. Always. Yeah.
Thanks, it's been a really interesting session, everyone. We've spoken a lot about the benefits of estrogen, we've mentioned progesterone. I also know that testosterone is something that some women are prescribed. Could you talk a little bit about the benefits of testosterone for menopausal women, please?
Yeah. And thanks for bringing it up, because I didn't mention it, because there's so much in it and I don't want to get bogged down. So the testosterone might seem a little bit funny. Why am I being prescribed that? Because we'd consider that to be a male hormone, which it is, okay? But as females, we still produce a certain level of testosterone, okay? And it's not first line. It's not the first thing I would prescribe for a woman if she were suitable for HRT. It comes a little bit later when there are particular symptoms, okay? And one of the main symptoms that testosterone helps a lot with is if libido is gone, okay? And it is something that will stimulate energy, okay? And again, it's something that I talk to the female about. It's given as a cream, so we call that topically, when you put it on the skin. Use a tiny amount daily, and it can be very effective for those concerns. But we monitor it. We monitor that with a blood test, because we don't want you getting too much testosterone. But it can be very effective, and women can be really amazed by the effects of it. Okay.
Kathy, any more questions coming in?
Just
online?
They've just been on exercise. The whole gambit of an hour a day is very, very beneficial. Just from a colleague saying, working children an hour a day is like a godsend. Can I do less? Can I do 15 minutes, 10 minutes? Is that okay?
Anything is okay. So as long as you get started, it's like you've taken the first step, and then build it up slowly. So start with 10 minutes, and maybe 10 minutes then divided into different parts of the day, and see how that goes. And then if that is, you are seeing the benefit, you will find the time to do more.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was reading somebody yesterday who does her 15-minute strength exercise in the morning, and she said on her other days she walks with her husband. Now she's in that 15. She said they started doing that during the lockdown, and I think now sometimes your partner might be the last person you want to go on a walk with. You want that hour out, but sometimes it might be a nice idea to incorporate that with the children if they're going to come with you or go on their bikes, or your partner. And I think sometimes making that time. I think the problem is, and I was saying this outside, I think for those of you who have children, they've been your priority now for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And it's really about sometimes we feel that we should be doing things for others. So your children might be starting to grow up, and now you might be looking after an elderly parent or whatever. It's really about, and sometimes it's, where's the time for me? So I think really it is about trying to put that time in and trying to, I don't know, maybe delegating is probably the wrong word, but trying to find that, even if it's only 15, 20 minutes. So maybe you can't get for an hour exercise today, but maybe you can decide within your colleagues at work that actually we're going to go for a walk for 15 minutes. That's all we have. So we'll just go and come back, and try and support each other, trying to get people out of the office. As Ananya said to me at the beginning, it's really easy to get into the emails during lunch and say I'll catch up, but actually that's not really benefiting me. So I think sometimes we do have to be around that, be kind to ourselves. Sometimes that self-care is about saying, actually, that email can wait, and I'm going to go and get 15 minutes of fresh air today. So I think that's important. Sometimes it's about, really trying to, that 15 minutes will be good for your mental health, but it's also kind of getting in that exercise. It might be good for lowering your blood pressure than dealing with those emails, actually. That's what I'm thinking. It might be better for my blood pressure.
There are guidelines, so we're all starting from a different place. So you're either building towards the guidelines, there are others who will well surpass the guidelines, and maybe it's the intensity that they look at. So I suppose it's to break it down into break it down and build it up. If that seems very far off for you, the 30 minutes, 10 minutes is perfect for now, and you've etched out 10, maybe you can etch out 15 a week later. You just keep building on it, as opposed to when you see the big numbers like that, I guess it's not to let that put you off, to you work towards it. You don't have to instantly go out the door and achieve it. They're just guidelines. So.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Just a question about, we were talking about the levels of cholesterol. If cholesterol, total cholesterol level is higher than norm because of the fraction of high density cholesterol, that good cholesterol is higher than norm, is it okay, or is there a reason for higher, upper limit of high density cholesterol?
So the high density cholesterol is your good cholesterol. So sometimes, yes, you can have the higher level, so they'll be looking at your ratios as opposed to your overall cholesterol number that we looked at, the TC, where we were saying that's less than 5. It's more, if you have a very high level, they look at a ratio for you, that TC to the HDL. But your good cholesterol, that HDL, provides positive protection for you. So it's a good thing to have a nice raised HDL.
And what ratio is that good or not good anymore? If between total and
you can get a total cholesterol to your HDL ratio. So it's kind of when you get your general blood result, you'll have your total cholesterol, your LDLs, your HDLs, and underneath that again, you'll see your ratios. So it's just to delve deeper into it. And I guess that's a good point in the sense that it's very easy to get your blood results back, and if to just hear yes that they're fine, it's good to have the conversation on it so that you can understand exactly what's in your blood results so that you can compare them the next time.
Mm-hmm. And what would be a reason of high level of good cholesterol? Is it maybe too much of consumption of olive oil or other sources?
The high cholesterol.
Is it a bad absorption of fats in general into the body because of lack of bile that absorbs fat?
I would see your good cholesterol, having a high good cholesterol, as a positive thing. And your good cholesterol, that HDL, that's coming from fruit, veg, fibre, exercise, your oily fish. You hear a lot of people use the omega-3s. All of those will raise your HDL. But it is actually, sometimes it can be a really tricky number to raise. So it is a positive thing if we can get a nice rich HDL. The LDL, the bad cholesterol, is more where you're looking at your saturated fats. So if you have too high saturated fats, that's going to raise your LDL, your bad cholesterol. And there you're looking at the usual, I'm no dietitian now, but you're looking at the sweets, treats, sugars, but you're also looking towards your animal fats, and a very high dairy diet may potentially raise your bad cholesterol, your LDL, too high.
So then the last question, if higher good cholesterol levels, good thing, so why there's an upper limit? Or can it be like higher than certain limit and that's it?
It's not an upper limit, it's to try and raise it that high. So some people can have difficulty. For women, we had said to try and get it to 1.2 or above, but for some people it can be a real challenge, even with the best of diets, to get it that high. So it is just to try. I suppose those limits are also set. We'd monitor it if you were on a cholesterol tablet like a statin, because that can deplete some of your cholesterol levels. So you might have to choose different statins to ensure that one that suits you, that will keep that good HDL.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for a very interesting conversation.
Thank you. So the 1.2 for your good cholesterol is, if you can get higher than that, that's good.
Oh, ideally.
But keep the bad one lower than 3.
So the good cholesterol, it's that balance that you're looking for. If we can raise up the good cholesterol, it'll hopefully help to remove the LDL, the bad cholesterol, from the blood vessels, take it to the liver to break it down. So you're looking for that balance. That's why cholesterol, I suppose, is so diet orientated as well, is because if we can get that diet rich in fruit, veg, fibre, really exercise has a powerful impact on our HDL, then we would hope that that'll give us the balance to try and reduce that LDL. Now, of course, there's always going to be people, because we naturally produce cholesterol, it has that protective value. So some people will have a familial element where they overproduce LDL. So no matter how high they get the HDL, it's not going to be enough to balance it out. They need support and medication with that, but you still get the positive benefits from trying to raise that HDL.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just one more question. You're talking about HRT. How do you feel about, thank you again, great presentation, ladies. You're talking about HRT. How do you feel about, herbal alternatives, or like, if you go to a chemist and get these supplements to help people through, be it perimenopause or menopause. How do you feel about them?
So, okay, so I know that there's so much, especially if you maybe go into Evergreen here in Galway, and they have a lot of different options that I haven't been trained in. Okay, so it's not from the medicine that I've learned. Okay, but it doesn't mean that I'll say no, it's all wrong. There is some evidence for red clover, and there's some other. I know in Ayurvedic there's some work done with ashwagandha and something, some type of a yeast, but I don't know enough about it. I will have patients that will come to me and say that, I'm noticing benefits from this. What do you think of this? So I'd like ask the person to show me what it is. The thing that I'm dubious about and that I will caution is buying anything online from a source. We certainly hear of stories of where something's been sold, and when you actually look at it, it's got a huge level of estrogen that you're consuming, and it's not been prescribed and it's not regulated. And I've been kind of given the message today that it's an individual case-by-case scenario. I'm weighing everything up to keep it safe, and you can't just be taking estrogen on its own. It needs to be regulated. Plus also, for most women, if you have an intact womb, so if you haven't had a hysterectomy, it must be matched with progestogen. So simple things. If you find it beneficial that you've bought, show it to your GP, okay? But I do know that there is evidence for red clover and ashwagandha. But after that, just think, is this a good idea now? And just check in, does it feel right? But I would run it by your GP. Keep it safe. Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions? We've covered a lot today.
Yeah.
I think if there's some takeaways is, your GP is there. If you're not being heard, then, and we've had this discussion, because women's health like we're a university, people have research areas, they have interested topics. So there's lots to cover in general practice. So maybe women's health isn't your GP's area of topic. There's nothing stopping you finding somebody who will. And I think we've seen lots and lots of evidence coming out now where we're seeing the idea of a menopause hub or women's health hub. Yeah. So talk to your healthcare provider, and if you can't have that conversation, find a healthcare provider that you can have that conversation with. The importance of our diet, and maybe staying away from the sugary stuffs, which sometimes when the mood isn't great, that's really what you want. I'm going to say for myself, that's what you want to go for. And really focus on, starting to build up your exercise. It's a journey. You're not on your own. I think, there's people here and there's lots of other people online today. This is a journey that we're on. And unfortunately, we do get older. We do, have to go through this. But I think we're now a generation that doesn't have to go through it in silence. We can talk about it. And as I said, it's somebody around you who's either ahead of you on that journey or behind you on that journey. And I think it's really about us supporting each other. And even the small things, you will see, and I'm sure you've sat in meetings where you're actually thinking, that person is really struggling, the heat in here. And I think simple things like saying, we might just open the window or open the door. COVID has given us great license to open the windows and doors now and let in fresh air. And sometimes that just breaks and takes that person out of that, stress of the worry and concern of having, that hot flush and kind of that heat in the room. So I think that's how we can support each other. So again, thank you to our three panel members today for their time. Thank you for you coming along today. And again, if you're interested in being part of that working group on our policy, send us an email to campus, to wellness@nuigalway.ie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.